We would be joined by the Principal Secretary for Trade, her name, Regina Ombam. Karibu sana to the Citizen Studio. My first question to you is this. So Kenya was one of the founding members of COMESA. 30 years on, what have we gotten out of it?
Thank you, Olive. Kenya, as one of the founding members of COMESA, has actually benefited immensely from the regional bloc. This is because Kenya already has a big market share in COMESA, which is around 16%. Kenya, in terms of earnings from COMESA, is almost getting to $3 billion US. That means we are able to trade with our COMESA member states quite well because of the zero tariffs among us. Again, because of that huge market access, Kenya has been able, therefore, to diversify its products so that it becomes more competitive. Recently, we're already seeing the level of information among Kenyans on what COMESA is and how important it is to us. And so we are seeing more of our exporters, more of our producers, including even the small-scale enterprises, really getting into the mix around trading within the COMESA region and beyond.
All right. So I'm a farmer in Trans Nzoia. My product is maize. I'm a tea farmer in central Kenya. And how does it, because you mentioned the small and medium-sized enterprises looking to benefit from COMESA. How about, you know, the guy who is farming maize or korosho, you know, how do they benefit from COMESA?
So, Olive, the whole issue of regional cooperation is that when you integrate as different countries and come together, you become a huge market in itself. So principally, you look at yourself, if you are left protected within your domestic setting and you didn't know about this other market that is there, then your trading would be domiciled within that domestic setting. Now, what we are doing under COMESA and through that regional integration, we are making sure that there are no barriers to trade within the member states of COMESA. So that farmer in Kitale who's growing maize, or that farmer who's growing korosho, as you said, is now made aware that that korosho can actually be sold beyond the boundaries of Kenya, and they can be able to fetch more competitive prices. At the same time, we are also equipping them with the necessary information so that they fully understand what the market is asking for at that level. So if it is issues to do with agricultural products, how do we make them competitive? Do they meet the sanitary conditions that are in place so that their products become competitive? We also work around ensuring that the farmers understand all the things that are, all the tools that are in place to ease doing business. So if it is an electronic certificate of origin that is required, we make them aware of that so that it makes it easier for them to move their product from one place to another. If there are issues to do with visa requirements, if that is not needed, we make them aware. So that farmer in Kitale, that farmer who's growing that korosho at the coast region, has full information of what the market expects them to do, and then now thinks beyond just doing that domestic kind of trading, and now thinks even bigger in terms of a bigger market access for them.
So there is sensitization that happens?
There is sensitization that happens.
All right, so we've talked about 21 member states, but there is there has been published the tripartite FTA. So we have EAC, we have SADC under that agreement, which I had also informed heavily after. So as a member of COMESA, as Kenya, what markets can we access under the FTA? Is it 16 or all 21? So
principally, I think I would like to make it very clear here is that when the AFCFTA issue came into being discussed at COMESA level, it was actually looking at having a free trade area for the entire African continent. So that's when we have the African Continental Free Trade Area. But the tripartite is actually getting the EAC, the SADC, and the COMESA countries to now form a tripartite market that brings together EAC, SADC, and COMESA. Note that there are some members who are members of EAC and they're not members of COMESA. They are members of SADC and they're not members of EAC, neither are they members of COMESA. So now here is a case where we're actually looking at because these are actually economic blocks in themselves, and they are trading economic blocks in themselves. So you can imagine we want to get to Africa. So we are now saying, why don't we have a tripartite agreement that brings in EAC, SADC, COMESA as one big trading block in itself? See how the rigors around that market gets to be opened up for those three regional blocks. That's eventually culminates into getting the entire African continent coming together. So I am already seeing a vision, if this tripartite works outright the way we've conceptualized it, with time we will be talking about now expanding it to ECAS, to ECOWAS, to the northern part, and then eventually now the African Free Trade Area will just work seamlessly to ensure that the African market becomes becomes big, and intra-Africa trade just prospers as our dream has been.
Okay, but how many countries can we access under the COMESA FTA?
So under COMESA, we are 21 countries. So as Kenya, we can actually access, because all members of COMESA get to enjoy the privileges that come with either restricted tariffs or zero tariffs in themselves. So we can access all the 21. Now you can imagine if we now get to tripartite, already we are members of EAC, now we are not members of SADC, but now tripartite brings COMESA, SADC, and us. Now again, we are able now to access a bigger market share in that. And that really helps trade grow immensely.
All right, so under EAC, it's also a customs union. So there are trade agreements in place under EAC, there are trade agreements in place under COMESA. Is there usually competition between the two?
Not really. There's really no competition between the two. There are protocols that are under EAC that are followed by we call ourselves their partner states, and those protocols are very clear around the EAC and what the EAC expects to be. Under COMESA, we also have the same protocols that are followed under it. So what we're actually looking at is the broader picture. If we now want to get to Africa as a free trading area, what we need to do first is harmonize what we have between the EAC, the COMESA, the SADC. If we're able to do that harmonization well, then we can actually see ourselves grow into harmonizing what we need to do for the African continent. You will agree with me, we are all different countries with our own sovereignties in our own way. But here we are saying now, even though we are different, there are some commonalities we have to put across so that we come together as a continent to trade more stronger, more effectively. And some of the things we really have to take into account is things that people overlook: security, peace, cost of doing business, cost of transport. All these critical enablers, we really need to take them into account so that we allow for that free movement of goods and services as we've envisioned in terms of really enhancing trade.
All right. You've talked about sovereignty, and there was a time where sugar farmers were concerned about cheaper imports of sugar from COMESA and felt that this was competition for them. How do you balance the interests of your nationals vis-a-vis your commitments? Because as much as we can access these markets and the commodities can also access our market. How do you balance the two?
So I think here we need to really be clear around what we are putting across as first protectionist measures to help maybe our nascent and infant industries to grow. And once they grow to a level where they are able to compete, then you can open up that market for the bigger market that we are talking about. What, in the case of sugar, as usual, when you now open up a market for more trade to happen, there will be those who will always come out to say, you know, this is hurting us, and so we would want to see protection coming into play. But we have to look at the critical factors around what is the bigger picture around this. So if we protect and we are not able to make that in terms of investment and in terms of returns on our trade, we have to look at that balance so that there's a win-win situation at the end of the day. So principally what I'm trying to say here is when industries are still young and nascent and growing, there's every reason to push in for protectionism. But as industries grow, they also have to grow and be able to trade with other industries and other economies out there. So as we see the strength of an economy in terms of growth, then it also helps in terms of expansion when you open it up to other markets. So the noise that, for lack of a better word, the noise that is made around when this happens, it's going to actually disfavor us. It's actually a noise that is really unwanted because what should happen in such a case is that once we realize that the industry is growing, for it to be able to export and be able to be competitive, we have to get a market for whatever we are producing. Because if we continue protecting and we are growing and we are not able to export out there, then we will have a situation of a glut and we have nowhere to export our work. Simple example, a case of agriculture where, you know, because of diversification and being able to open up markets and being able to export perishables within a very short period of time, we have actually seen the agriculture sector grow immensely because now we don't have a situation where we have wastage since our farmers don't know where to take their products. And we have a scenario where we have now opened up the markets for them, and now they're able to even export within a specified period of time, get to the market where people are saying they can eat from the farm to the table on the same day. And this actually just opens up development and livelihoods in a very positive manner.
All right. It's interesting when you talk about agriculture because we've seen globally a trend towards protectionism, and there are those who argue, such as the Secretary General for COMESA, that now we need to look at ourselves. But part of the challenges that have been identified are, one, poor productivity and connectivity. How are you addressing this as member states?
So as member states, and that's why we really have the heads of state and government summit coming into being, because even the heads of states and governments have realized the value add that trade brings to an economy. And so with the changing global landscape in trade, Africa is now, and COMESA member states are actually thinking of how do we get our intra-Africa trade to grow to that level where we actually see ourselves competitive. If you look at us like Kenya, for example, our biggest trading partner is actually Uganda and Tanzania. So if we are able actually to make sure our markets work out right within ourselves, then that market share and what we benefit from trade is actually going to be enormous. So if we are actually looking at ways of bringing in digital technology to help us improve our trade within the region, those are the key discussions that we are going to have during the COMESA summit. If we are looking at things to do like the clean energy and energy-saving ways of production as additional ways of helping to reduce the cost of production, those are big areas that, you know, if we actually focus on, we can actually change the way we do trade in the region. There are things like infrastructure development, just ensuring that we have efficient road network, our railway line is working just right, our port systems are working right, and our borders are actually well facilitating trade in themselves. These are areas I'm sure the heads of states and governments will really focus on to actually help improve the intra-Africa trade that we're already seeing. We are not tapping into it the way we should.
All right. When we talk about digitization or digitalization, which is the theme of the summit, I saw that Kenya launched 3 days ago the electronic certificate of origin. So what are the implications of that?
So, Olive, this is a very smart way of actually getting to do business. We're actually moving away from the cumbersome way of having to fill a lot of forms when you're moving your goods from one country to another. So with an electronic certificate of origin, it is so easy to electronically get to know where the goods are coming from and where they're destined to. So instead of having all these stops along the way, because that wastes a lot of time in itself, and in trade, time is money in itself, that is actually going to be a game changer in the way people trade, because now there'll be a lot of ease in terms of movement. We are now in the 21st century where trading is not just the mere fact of moving goods from point A to B. There are all these parameters you have to look into. How consistent am I? If I'm being asked for 100,000 biro pens over a 5-year period of time, am I ensuring that 100,000 is given every 5 years? Because if I'm not able to, then I don't become competitive anymore, because those are some of the consistency around trade are some of the factors that the modern times people are looking at when it comes to trade. The efficiency, how fast the product is reaching is another key factor that is being looked at. And the way even you package your product and all these other factors of even how your product was grown, were you using child labor to grow your product? That is something that can make the market say, we are not accepting your product. So that change is what this kind of digitalization is really helping to empower the producers and everybody in that ecosystem to be able to trade seamlessly and efficiently and be able to deliver on time and be able to get a reward for the positive impact of trade in terms of the impact on their livelihood and also impact on their production and every other thing that goes towards the positivity of trading effectively. All right.
Is there a scenario where, because in Kenya sometimes we've seen farmers say we will no longer produce macadamia, for instance, because it's not profitable anymore. We've seen tea or coffee farmers threaten to cut down their crop, saying, it's not profitable anymore. I'd rather plant something else. Is a scenario where member states can focus on what they produce based on, we can produce this best because we have the best conditions for this? Is that, is that one of the considerations, as opposed to creating that competitiveness over the same produce?
You're very right, Olive, and that's what we are actually looking at in this whole ecosystem around trade. Even having some agreements that mutually recognize products, so within the region. So if we are having those mutual recognition agreements where we're actually saying it doesn't really need, if I'm moving my tea from Burundi to the port of Mombasa, once it's been checked with the Bureau of Standards of Burundi, there is no need of it again being checked by the Bureau of Standards of Kenya. So through that mutual agreement, you allow for goods to move freely without, again, subjecting the producer to all sorts of things. So these are the kind of information that we need to get our farmers aware, because sometimes somebody gets dejected. They're like, I won't continue growing this tea because once I get it to this country, again, it has to go through all those motions, and this is just too much for me. The other thing that I think we really need to do very much in terms of sensitizing our farmers is actually getting them to know what the market is asking for, so that that farmer who's producing macadamia fully understands that if I'm getting this macadamia, say, to Europe, these are the standards that Europe has set, so that I grow my macadamia knowing very well that when it is going to get to Europe, it will not be rejected because it has met all the standards that the European market asks for. I think the biggest undoing we've done is not to get our farmers aware of what that market is asking for, so that when they are growing, they know I'm growing this, I've done everything that goes to it with it, so that when I'm sending it out, it is a clean deal for me. And that is something we really, really need to get our farmers to understand, because somebody gets dejected. You go, you tell them there's a need for macadamia, there's a big market for it. They get excited about it. They go grow their macadamia. They already done their mathematics, they know what they're going to get. Then they get it to the market, they're told, no, it can't sell. And they wonder why. So that piece of information is something that we really need to get the public to understand, to know, so that they go into that business with full information.
All right. Lastly, in a minute or so, Kenya is taking over the chairmanship of the COMESA authority. What does that imply? Does it mean that we set the agenda for COMESA in the next year, or?
Principally, when you take chairmanship, you basically, you're setting the agenda for it. And in the last COMESA meeting, there were key issues that came up, issues to do with digital technology, issues to do with market access, issues to do with industrialization. So Kenya is actually taking on the chairmanship at a time when already Kenya is a pace setter in quite a number of things. And I am really proud of what the drive and the vision of what His Excellency, our President, has for this country. We are the Silicon Savannah of the African continent. When it comes to digital technology, we are way ahead. So Kenya is taking up that chairmanship, and therefore will be able to even guide more when it comes to digital matters. We are the first country that I think in the region that has already pronounced that, you know, for all African states coming into the country, it's a visa-free. That's already an indication that we're already looking into that free movement of people within the continent. We are one country that has really embraced issues to do with energy and climate resilient agriculture, mining, tourism. And these are some of the key issues that are now will be discussed once Kenya takes on the chairmanship. So already we feel we are ready, and I know with the leadership of our president taking on COMESA chairmanship, I think the transformation that we want to see within COMESA and beyond is actually going to happen.
All right, thank you for speaking to us. That is the Principal Secretary for Trade, Regina Ombam. Tomorrow there is an EU horticultural meeting, the day after a business forum. After that, the ministerial summit on peace and security, and followed by the heads of state and government summit. We take a break, but Citizen Sunday Live continues on the other side.